recession, or something relative to the January?
The story I read, what there are typical revisions to data that comes out.
Sure.
Take for instance, I think GDP data is released and then revised at least twice.
Right.
These are last year.
Downward twice.
Right. Last year there was a several decade-long revision of jobs figures. The story again I read this morning.
You're talking about not something relative to what we're going to read and see tomorrow.
No. This dates back from governing months from, again, the story said I think April 2008 through March of 2009.
So, earlier you said 2007. Did you mean 2000?
Well, no. I said that this governs the total job loss over the period that begins in December 2007 at the beginning of the recession.
So the additional job losses that you expect the revision to show began in 2007, not
No.
2008.
No. Again, I should just send you the story I read. The revisions, they wrote it. The recession began officially, as per the board, in December of 2007. The revisions in the story I read cover April of 2008 through March of 2009. Those months obviously are encompassed in what we broadly know as the time period during the recession.
You don't have to yell at me now. That's great.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Following
I don't know if that counts as your time or
counts as
Hans.
his time. I assure you. It's
Wow.
Okay.
Now he's
there
yelling
time
at us.
limits now?
Well,
Who knows?
not for me.
The president often talks, and you did a minute ago, and talking to Jake about the boom and bust cycles. Is one of the downsides, and one of the things the American public needs to appreciate, looking at these unemployment numbers that you projected out, is that it's a slower climb out when you have a scenario that the president wants to have, if he achieves it, of a non-boom type recovery. Is that something the American people need to either prepare themselves for or be ready to expect that?
Well, Major, I think
this unemployment process is going to be a very slow
Major,
heal.
I think many people that are dealing with the unemployment process have been dealing with it for quite some time. Long-term unemployment is at one of its highest points ever.
That's the question: when is the turn? And are you one of the things you're trying to say is the turn is going to be slow?
Well, what I'm saying is that this will take time, but most importantly, and what the president has talked about, not just throughout the campaign, and not just throughout his first year in office, is we have to create a new foundation for job creation for the future. That if what we do is go back to boom and bust economies, where we're, well, hold on, can I reclaim some of my time? Well, the boom and bust economies, what you're going to end up with is, again, going back to what I talked about as what happened in the last decade. You had times of job growth, you had times of job loss, but over the course of the decade, you were basically flat. If we're going to continue to make progress economically, we have to put ourselves on a far different path.
Right, but as the numbers indicate, when it was flat, the unemployment rate was lower when the president decided to run for this office than he's projecting it will be at the end of the actuarial tables of his newest budget. Yes. And many Americans would say it may have been flat, but at least it was a lot lower. And what I'm getting at is, in this process of averting a boom and bust economy, do you have a slower turn?
Major, what we've gone through is an economic downturn that we haven't seen since the Great Depression of the late 1920s and the 1930s. Look, the American, the American people understand, many of them have been out of work for a long, long time. They understand that far before any board declared the beginning of a recession, that they were working longer, they were working harder, they were increasing their productivity, yet at the same time their wages either were on that flat line or going down. They understood that their costs got more expensive. The cost of energy got more expensive. The cost of healthcare got more expensive. The cost of college got more expensive. So look, that was even before the official recession began, and certainly before a series of excessive risk-taking by a few nearly dragged the economy back to a period of a Great Depression.
Right, and all I'm asking is, do the American people need to appreciate, as they look at the economic future, as charted by this administration, that it's going to be slower for unemployment to come down?
Major, I think I started by
prepare
saying I
themselves.
think the American people understand that because they've been dealing with this far longer than than this administration occupying this White House.
On trade, the president's talked about it more aggressively lately. Gary Locke is giving a speech right now at the National Press Club. In that speech, I didn't find any specific reference to a time for approving the pending South Korean, Colombian, or Panama trade agreements. For those nations who are now perhaps enthusiastic the president's talking about trade, what can you tell them about when the president in this White House is going to push those agreements and get them through Congress? When I talked to the president about South Korea in Beijing, he said, I want that done in 2010. Either
Well, there you
early
go.
or-
What are you asking me for?
Well, but nothing's happened. It's not, you can't find
Well, it's
any
only
evidence.
February, Major.
I know.
wouldn't,
He said it's going to happen either early or late, which I interpreted meaning early in 2010 or after the midterm elections. So for those three deals,
Let me
which
say,
many-
it would not be good for my job security to go out right now and contradict the three answers you've just given me on behalf of your question that the president gave you in November. I would simply say that, look, the president was very clear and specific in the State of the Union.
It not happening. I'm trying to understand the explanation of him saying he'd prefer to
Well-
have it happen and nothing being done.
Well, Major, you just noted that a speech has been given where the Secretary of Commerce. No, hold on. But the Secretary of Commerce is laying out the president's vision for doubling exports in 5 years. Okay, so though an individual FTA may not be mentioned in that speech, the president obviously envisions the increase of those exports through a whole host of things, including the free trade agreements that he outlined quite specifically in the State of the Union. He did not outline, and I don't have to outline a specific timeline for that, understanding that the president has laid out a very aggressive goal on increasing exports, partly through the trade agreements that you mentioned.
One question on security. One question. It's important.
Definitely.
Senator Bond wrote a letter to the president today about a conversation that we had here in the briefing room yesterday. Bill gave a couple of answers, many answers really, on there was no political nature to the White House explanation of the dealing with Abdul Muttalib. What Bond says in his letter is that the senators on the Intelligence Committee were briefed specifically earlier this week that the disclosure of Abdul Muttalib's cooperation should not be revealed because it was, he says in this letter, doing so would threaten ongoing efforts to stop operations the Intelligence Committee thought were possibly happening against the United States. He writes in this letter, distortion of the congressional notification process suggests that other considerations are taking precedence over keeping timely and sensitive information away from our enemies. I know a charge you would fundamentally reject, but I want to get your response
Well,
to that.
first and foremost, I don't want to speak for Senator Bond, who, if the timeline you outline, a Monday briefing for a Tuesday hearing, why he would, in his Tuesday hearing, use the statement that the subject refused to cooperate after he was Mirandized. So I don't want to speak for the senator who didn't certainly use any of that information to correct what he said in public in a hearing that happens a day after. I would say this, having read the letter. During a hearing on Tuesday, information was released that clearly showed that Mr. Abdul Muttalib was indeed talking again to interrogators. For those of you that participated in the background briefing, you know that was not something that was timed purposefully.
Were they not supposed to reveal it?
It was not timed purposefully. Soon after that, media reported. We felt it important to contextualize, because many of you were emailing us, what this testimony meant. I would say, again, having read the letter, no briefing is done here